Retaliation is happening, folks. And with that retaliation going on, what does that tell you about real reform within the VA? It ain't happening. All they're trying to do is do spin control because people saw things were not right. They were corrupt and being done wrong, and veterans are being harmed because of it. And they did things out of their morals and made conscious decisions. And things came to light. Well, now they're just in spin control. They're trying to put things back in the dark. And they're just trying to do what they have to kind of make that light that's shining on them go away. And placate the people. Placate the veterans. Placate the politicians who are investigating them. Because the union and the VA workers who are members of the union just want their safe little union jobs where they do as little as possible for more pay than they deserve because of how little they are really doing. Now, there are hard workers within VA. I'm not saying that every VA worker is like that. By and large, that's not the case. But there's just enough. There's enough policies that are put in place that these good workers are told, you're going to follow these policies because that's the only way we're going to make things work. And a lot of times these workers don't realize that the policies they're following locally are actually illegal from the higher up stages because they're not told, they're not given the information. And it all snowballs, folks. So right now, the so-called reforms are being enacted. They're not reforms. They're smoke bombs. They're smoke screens. So let me put it this way. When they tell you not to pay attention to the man behind the screen, behind the veil, kick the veil open, look at the little magician, and tell him he's no wizard. And then tell him to go find another job because he's not fooling anyone. He's just covering up for people who are hurting people, either through being complicit or complacent or through inaction. So that's going on. So how about that, folks? Meanwhile, I got some disturbing news yesterday. For those that don't know this part about me, like I said, I served for quite a few years in the military and met a lot of people. And one of the people I met was a great man by the name of Chris Seifert. And I served with Chris in Baumholder, Germany when he was still infantry. He even spent some time as our battalion adjutant, our what we call our PAC, our S1. And I found out that he was going to be going from being an infantry officer, he's branch detailed, and when he became a captain, he was going to be going and learning military intelligence and spend the rest of his career as a military intelligence officer. So I, along with my officer, because I was an NCO, we helped to train Chris up as best as we can before he headed off to school to kind of give him an edge. And he was smart. He picked up stuff quickly. And he's also a great guy. Hardworking, knew how to combine hard work with a little bit of play to kind of keep things going and keep things fun, especially when you're doing serious hard work. Sometimes you have to put that fun in there while doing the serious hard work to make it bearable. Or not to say bearable if you enjoy what you do. But anyway, Chris, he was a great guy. And then he went on and went to the military intelligence school and ended up assigned to one of the brigades within the 101st, where he served in what's normally a major slot as a brigade S2. Well, then a terrorist sympathizer, a traitor, and he's convicted now, so I can say this. It's not alleged. This murderer went on a rampage and threw grenades into the sleeping area where the brigade officers were sleeping, and then took his rifle and started shooting and ended up killing 2 officers. One of them was the operations officer, a major, and the other one was my friend, Captain Christopher Seifert. And I was in Iraq when this happened, and he was still down in Kuwait getting ready to actually enter for the 101st to start their portion of the operation when this happened. And it was a blow. It hurt a lot. It still bothers me whenever I think about this. So naturally, I have a little bit of an emotional tie to the whole deal. I have a little bit of bias. But Hasan Akbar was just granted an appeal. Now, that doesn't mean his appeal was granted. It means that he has a hearing coming up for his appeal. And in his appeal, he's claiming, or his lawyers are claiming, that he should not have the sentence that he has. That he should have a much lower sentence, if any sentence at all, because he was emotionally and mentally unstable to begin with and should never have been in the military. So it's the military's fault that he was a murdering traitorous scumbag. Sorry, folks, don't buy it. He wasn't a new private in there that was having difficulty adjusting the military lifestyle. He was a sergeant. He was a non-commissioned officer. He was an E5. He had 3 stripes up on his sleeve. He had served for a few days, a few years, and he was a leader. Granted, a low-level leader, but still a leader within the military. So he wasn't some private who just freaked out. He was... There's no way that this was something that was latent and just hidden for years and years. He did this on purpose. It was part of an agenda. He was doing this as a violent terrorist act to protest the fact that we as a military were going to fight tyrants and terrorists. And he could sit there and say, well, it was because of his religion or what have you. I'll tell you right now, during the with the unit I was with during the invasion of Iraq, I worked side by side with a Muslim, and he was a great guy, and he was a good battle buddy. And I asked him what his views were, and he said, flat out, Al-Qaeda is not Islam. They claim to be Islam, but that's not Islam. It's heresy. And then he turned and looked and said, and Saddam Hussein has nothing to do with the religion and everything to do with the fact that he's a tyrant and everything he does actually violates his view, meaning the fellow soldier, his view of what Islam is all about. And by the way, the war in Iraq had nothing to do with religion, and he said that flat out. So he had no problems with getting rid of somebody who is oppressing other people and oppressing freedom. So, from that perspective, folks, there you have it. So Hasan Akbar, he was siding with tyrants and terrorists against good people and against his people who should have been his brothers and sisters in uniform in the U.S. Army and his fellow Americans. But he's going up for appeal. Now, I'm not going to hold my breath on him actually getting his appeal granted. I don't think he's going to win his case. But the whole fact that they're willing to entertain it bothers me a little bit, because I don't see how this case could possibly hold any water. All they're trying to do is postpone his execution. That's all this is, folks. Let's quit wasting taxpayer money on feeding this scumbag and rush him through the due process. Rush him through. And then be done with it. Because if there's any case that's cut and dry, it's this one. This one and Nidal Hassan from the Fort Hood shooting. Cut and dry. They're both terrorists. They both attacked, through doing treason. That's the only way to put it. Their fellow military members. And that's the latest on Nidal Hassan, the Fort Hood shooter. is now he wants to be let go because he says he's a political prisoner because he belongs with his ISIS, ISIL, IS, Al-Qaeda brethren. Yeah. There's the latest with that one. He's a nut job. And the world would be a better place without him. Just saying. He's already been convicted. So, we have that going on. Other things going on. For those who were listening to the show yesterday, I think I hinted at this. If not, go on over to BuzzPo and read my article on the FDA and the TSA. Have you guys heard the latest of this one, guys? Look, according to the FDA, their advice is if you're traveling by aircraft, especially if you're going overseas, but you have your prescription medications with you, the best thing to do is to be prepared to give the TSA all your medical information. You have to now keep your prescription medications packed separately in a separate little Ziploc bag, just like your toiletries, and it has to go through the scanner. And if the TSA decides to give you a hands-on inspection, in other words, if they're going to search your stuff without a warrant, you have to be prepared to justify your medications. They have to be in their original bottles with the doctor's information on there so they can call your doctor and talk to your doctor about your medical history. You have to be able to tell them what your dosage is and what you're taking the medications for, in case your doctor prescribed the medications for something that they shouldn't be prescribed for, or whatever the excuse is. Basically, this new rule says that if the TSA wants to, you will violate HIPAA and give them information that these non-medical personnel have no rhyme, reason, right, or purpose to know about. They're just supposed to be screening for bad stuff. If you're bringing something on the aircraft that could be used to harm other people, they shouldn't be asking you about your personal medical history or your current medications. That's between you and your doctor. But there you go. And it's suggested by the FDA. Now, of course, this comes in because there's a lot of people who are traveling overseas who want advice on what to do about their prescriptions, whether going to another country or if they're in another country and they have their prescriptions and are coming back. There's some good advice in there because not everything that's legal here is legal in other countries. Not everything that's legal in other countries is legal here. But here's the really weird one. There's stuff that's legal in both places that could be prescribed for use for one ailment in another country, but cannot be prescribed for that same ailment here in the U.S., despite the fact that the pharmaceutical is legal for other ailments. So they can actually take away your medications if they're given to you for an ailment that's perfectly legal in Germany, even if that pharmaceutical is perfectly legal in the United States, but they just decide you can't use it for that ailment, even if it's working. Even if it hasn't been approved for that ailment in the United States, and you were given it on an experimental basis here in the United States for something that's already approved in another country, and you come back and they say, well, we don't care if you're part of this study or not, you can't use it, so we're taking your drugs away from you, or you can't travel with them, or we're going to fine you. Because the FDA is also working with the DEA and the customs, the ICE guys, and now TSA, and they think that they have the right to all of your personal medical information, just so you can take a flight to go see your family over the holidays. So that's the latest on that. and all kinds of other neat stuff going over at BuzzPo, folks. So go ahead and take a look over there and read over there. I do know there's a story coming out later, kind of talking about, well, a journalist from the UK came over here and did a report about young ladies who have pink pellet guns or pink BB guns, and trying to say this is all bad, especially since we had that awful accident where a gun instructor was dumb enough to hand an Uzi to a 9-year-old girl who probably was not going to be able to handle the firearm and got himself shot. That was just one guy being dumb. And unfortunately, that poor girl's going to have to live with that for the rest of her life. Would I give a 9-year-old an Uzi? No. Would I give her a BB gun to practice the principles of marksmanship with under direct supervision so that she doesn't go and decide to start shooting things that shouldn't be shot? Yeah, I'd watch her. And, she'd be able to bring the thing out and fire at the approved targets with adult supervision. I would have no problem with that. They're good skills to learn, and it's a good, wholesome hobby if done safely and correctly, and you can never teach people how to be safe. There's never a too early time to start. So, that's my 2 cents. Now, I'm sure Eric Reed is going to have an article up about that subject over at BuzzPo sometime later today. If he doesn't, somebody else may grab on it. Other things going on to take a look at. I really don't want to talk about Ferguson, folks. In fact, you know what? There's things that we can talk about, but I'm done diving into the dark hole of stupidity that is the events in Ferguson. So I'm going to do you all a favor on this Freedom Friday, and I'm not going to go there. You've all heard my 2 cents on that. And if you haven't, you can go back and re-listen to the podcasts from the last couple of weeks. I'm sure I've said enough about it. But there's some good stuff over there at BuzzPo, so go ahead and read there, as well as, of course, like I said, the Daily Caller. Go ahead and read over there as well as some other good sites out there. So people, make sure you're doing your research. Remember, the mainstream media is not the only media out there, and they don't necessarily tell you the whole story, and sometimes they won't even carry a story simply because they don't think it sells, or they don't think they're trying to tell you what you want to know instead of you looking at what you want to know. So don't be afraid of the new media, folks. Go out there and see what other people are digging up and talking about and writing about. In the meantime, I want to thank you all for listening to our show for this August 29th, 2014 edition of the Mouth of Matuszak show, this Freedom Friday. And, well, I'm not going to promise to be back on Monday. Yeah, I'm not making that promise, folks. Right now I have plans to do a show on Monday. However, it is Labor Day, and the family may have something else to say about that. So I'm at their whims this weekend, as I've made a promise a while ago, is that I'm not going to promise the weekends for work. I'm going to promise it to my family first. They have my priority. And they should for you, because remember, you've worked hard the whole weekend, so you've earned your little bit of pursuit of happiness there. So, without further ado, folks, I'm going to get on to tying things up so I can enjoy my weekend, so you can get on to enjoy yours. So we'll see you all back here either Monday or Tuesday. Well, not here on Heartland. Hopefully, we'll be on our own server. Ooh, but more information to come on that, folks. And I'll keep you posted through the blog and through Twitter and Facebook. So in the meantime, you have a great weekend, and we'll see you right back here next week, either Monday or Tuesday. Stay tuned. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.